2, 3.
Hi everyone, it's Sue Cigaris here again for this week's edition of Food with Love. Last week, as you probably remember, we had guacamole, and I promised that I would do cornbread if a few people asked for it, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. Where I have this recipe is actually in a book that I bought a few years ago as I was studying macrobiotics. I got this book, which is the Hip Chick's Guide to Macrobiotics, and you can probably still order them on Amazon if you want to. Mine's got quite yellowed pages. I've used it a lot. It's a beautiful book. And the cornbread I'm going to show you today is part of a whole recipe that involves a base and a topping, but I'm just extracting this particular part of the recipe. So I've already got my oven on, and it's 200 degrees Celsius, or if you're using fan force, you make it a little bit cooler than that. I've got mine at 180. And I've got my tray already with a piece of baking paper over it, just to help the food not to stick to the base of the tray. This is just an ordinary biscuit tray with low sides. So that's ready and waiting. So the simple principle here is that we're going to bring some wet ingredients together with some dry ingredients, and we're going to mix them together and pop them in the oven. That's it. So we get dry, wet, mix them up, in they go. All right, so the dry ingredients we're using today, we will have where's my measuring cup? Here we are, simple measuring cup. And we're going to start with some cornmeal, because that's the basis of cornbread. So it's actually the raw polenta. You could find it, the label might either say polenta or cornmeal, depends where you're buying it from. If I can give you a little close-up of the product here. It's...
Can't get it.
Okay. All right, just slight camera issue there. It's all right. Anyway, so we're going to do 1 1/4 cups of cornmeal. So that's one, and I'm using a sieve as well, because some of my dry ingredients might get a bit lumpy, and what we want to do is make sure that it blends really well. So 1 1/4 cups are going in here. Oops, I've got my label in there. So 1 1/4, that's a generous quarter. I don't mind if it's not 100% accurate. Okay, we need some whole wheat pastry flour. I'm actually using wholemeal spelt flour, and I like spelt because it's a related grain to wheat, but it actually has a less gluten in it, and it's also got more protein in it. And this is an organic spelt flour. So I'm going to need 3/4 cup of this. So we just get that measurement right. That's too much. And take some out. Sorry, that was a bit loud. Okay, that's more like it. 3/4 cup goes in there. And we also need some unbleached white flour. And I happen to have this one here, which is an unbleached Healthy Baker plain flour. That's good enough. And we need 2/3 cup of this one. I've got just enough. Looks like I have to go and get some more. Okay, very good. So 2/3 cup of that, and I'm going to need 1 1/2 tablespoons of baking powder. Not teaspoons, tablespoons. Now, if you don't have a measuring spoon, you can use the formula that, generally speaking, 3 teaspoons makes 1 tablespoon if you're using an American recipe. If you're using an English recipe, it's 4 teaspoons. So I happen to know this is an American one, so I'm going to use 3 teaspoons per tablespoon, and she wants 1 1/2 tablespoons. So that makes 3 to get my 1 tablespoon. 1, 2, 3, and then another 1 1/2 to get that, simple mathematics, to get that half. So that's my baking powder. I also need 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt, and I'm using, as usual, my Celtic salt. It's unrefined, unbleached, full of minerals. That's a beautiful salt. It's quite a dense a little bit larger the grains. So I now have all my dry ingredients in the sieve, And we put them through into the bowl, and as you can see there's quite a few lumpy bits in the bottom, so it's just as well we use the sieve. That comes there. Alright, so I'm finished with that. I can put that away now. So the next part is the wet ingredients. For the dry ones I'm just mixing them through slightly like that. It's amazing how this all comes together. I'll just pop that there for the moment. And now what we need here is 1 1/4 cup of half measure, okay, 5/8 of a cup of water. Well, it's just over a half a cup. I've already measured this out beforehand. There we are, that's our generous half cup of water. I need 2/3 of a cup of soy milk. I'll just get that out of the fridge. This is my favourite soy milk. It's Bonsoy. It's got no added sugar in it and it's delicious. All the best baristas use it. So there's our 2/3 of a cup of soy milk goes in. I need 1/3 of a cup of olive oil, and I just have to pop across and grab the olive oil. 1 second. So what did we say? That was 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. Just pouring that. They actually say to use light olive oil, and I don't worry about it. I just use extra virgin olive oil for everything. Keeps it simple. So I use that, and 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup. So this is our only sweetening agent, and I use the pure maple syrup, of course, not some flavoured kind of stuff. So this is from the maple tree, and we want 1/4 of a cup of that. I'm just measuring that out. Now this, even though it has a little bit of sweetening in it, you can use this cornbread in a savoury context, or you can put butter and jam on it if you like. There are many things you can do with this cornbread as a base. So that's our maple syrup. And then finally, our final ingredient, the magic touch, is vanilla extract. So we're going to have just a teaspoon, no, 1/4 of a teaspoon of this tiny, tiny little touch. It just gives it a very subtle, special flavour. So just a tiny amount that goes in there. Okay, so what we're going to do is, before we combine them, we'll give those wet ingredients a bit of a mix through. Just blend them through a little bit. Then we mix them all together. This is the last step before you put it into your pan. So we're just bringing together the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients. And we don't have to do a lot of mixing, just very lightly to blend them. Because of the raising agent, the baking powder, you'll start to find it goes a little bit bubbly. So it's already doing its work. And you've got this nice mixture. It's like a batter in consistency, more like a batter than a cake mix. And that's about as much mixing as it needs. So now deposit the mixture into my baking tray. I should turn it round so you can see what I'm doing. And if you've got people around you that like to lick the bowl after you've made a cake, they might just like those few scrapings. It's very delicious. And I will now spread the mixture across. It doesn't matter if it goes over the paper a little bit. You can see I'm not a 100% accurate cook. It's all right. It's all about the taste and the nourishment. for me. Some people are meticulous with their presentation. It's not one of my strengths. Okay, here we go. Beautiful. Okay, that's done. And now I'm going to pop it in the oven for about 25 minutes before I'll check it. It might take 35 to 40 minutes, just depending on the consistency of your mixture, how strong is your oven. We've got a new oven which is quite efficient, so I'm going to check mine in about 20 to 25 minutes. As I say, sometimes I've cooked it for a little longer. What we're going to be looking for is that, you know, it's no longer glistening and wet. It's obviously dry, it's begun to bake. It will have a nice golden, slightly light brownish look to the top. And when I touch the top, I'll get a little bit of springiness. So I'll show you all that when I bring it out of the oven. And here we are already. It's only 20 minutes and we have produced this beautiful tray of cornbread. 20 minutes baking time. So what you can see is here is it's a lovely golden brown top. There are some cracks across the surface, that's all fine. That's just where it's expanded. And I've got it sitting on a rack here. If I want to let it cool a little bit more quickly, I can actually take the bread and slide it out onto this rack. There we are. So we help speed up the cooling process. And then once it's cool, it's ready to eat. Of course, we can never wait until it's completely cool before we start trying it, because you want to see how nice it is. So I'm just going to cut off a little piece here and show you. It's lovely. It's a little bit more crunchy on the outside and a little bit more doughy on the inside. But that's what it looks like inside. And one of the loveliest ways to eat it for a treat is to put on a little bit of butter, a little bit of jam. I like to use this, there's no such thing as a sugar-free jam, I'm afraid, but at least it's only the fruit sugars, the naturally occurring fruit sugars, and it's an occasional treat. I'm not into making my own jams yet, but that's coming. So here we are, a beautiful homemade treat. You can have it like this, or you could spread your beautiful guacamole onto it that you made before. You can also put it with soups. You can have it as an occasional treat in the afternoon. But overall, I mean, you're looking at something that's quite nutritious and healthy. You can see everything that's gone into it. There's no preservatives here. It's a low GI, low gluten-y kind of thing. A little bit of protein is in there too. And so it's one of those nice little treats you can have without too much worrying about, you know, have I just eaten something bad? It's actually a really beautiful thing. And enjoy in moderation. Until next time, I'll see you on Food with Love.